The first time my daughter-in-law called me our heaviest subscription, she didn't whisper. She said it in the kitchen, leaning on my refrigerator as if she'd paid for it, while I stood there with a dripping dish towel between my hands. My son laughed in that nervous way he has, eyes sliding past mine to the floor tiles he never notices need scrubbing. I felt the old familiar heat behind my ears, the one that always comes when I have rehearsed a polite answer for hours and the scene plays differently on stage. I had spent the morning labeling jars so their toddler wouldn't eat pickling salt again. I had ironed Mark's shirts and stitched a loose button. None of that counted. I was a subscription. Something to cancel. I told them that evening I would be going back to my own flat after the weekend. That I was imposing. Jade smiled, slim fingers wrapped round her mug like a trophy. Not imposing, Evelyn. Just the utilities have doubled. You understand economics. You used to run a library. She always spits the word used with the shine of new cutlery. She has a social media page about financial wellness and the habit of making advice sound like mercy. When my husband died 5 years ago, leaving me a modest payout in this small 2-bedroom, I took comfort in the quiet, in routine, in the damp smell of paper and the too strong tea. I organized the community book swap and was the person people texted if they couldn't find the battery drawer. Then Mark lost his job, Jade's followers dipped, and suddenly I had untapped assets. They moved into my flat under the idea of bridge months. Their words. I told myself it was temporary. The first cut was subtle. Jade showed me a banking app on her phone and tapped quickly. Let me automate your bills, she said. Less stress for you. Your pension hits the third Friday, right? We should get in front of it. I am a woman who lived by handwritten ledgers and the comfort of paper clips. It felt like putting my keys in someone else's coat pocket and saying, please, take me home later. Neighbors changed around me. The concierge Louise started giving me longer looks at my mail. The woman from 5B, who watercolors daffodils on the back steps, stopped me by the bins. You good, dear? You look squeezed. I told her I was fine, and then went upstairs and stood in my pantry counting jars until the numbers set my breathing right. Seeds of worry arrived on schedule. A letter from the bank with my name spelled wrong. Evelyn, a mistake I never make, was opened on the side. I thought I had done it. Another envelope addressed to account holder or guardian made my fingers go cold. The word guardian doesn't visit out of the blue. It arrives with a suitcase. That night, after everyone slept, I stacked my papers in a neat column and found something I hadn't planted. A printed draft, durable power of attorney, with my name and Mark's inserted into a template line, dated next week. On the margin, a yellow sticky note in Jade's looping hand. Sign at Notary Wednesday. Streamline everything. The word streamline makes meat out of people. I should have confronted them. Instead, I slid the paper back where I found it, folded an old photograph into my cardigan pocket, my husband on the stoop holding a bag of bagels like a medal, and went down to the lobby. Luis was mopping in slow, careful lines. Luis, I said, do the cameras work? He stopped, leaning the mop on his shoulder like a violin. More than you think, Miss Hart. Then in a lower voice, and I noticed you stopped picking up your own mail. Humiliations work like a leaky tap. They drip and you place a bowl, then a second bowl, then you stop hearing the water and only hear the clatter of your new carefulness. Jade began narrating my movements like content. We've been decluttering my Emil's life, she told her phone one afternoon. I'll show you the pantry before and after. I stood in the frame and smiled because you learn to be background. She found expired pills that I had needed once after my knee surgery and held them up like a public service announcement. Twice in a week, she accidentally took my bank card to the farmer's market and came home with branded tote bags and artisanal vinegar that tasted like regret. You never use it anyway, she said, dropping the card on the counter with a clink. You don't even know your PIN without looking at the sticky note. She had peeled that sticky off my planner and replaced it with a blank square. Small thefts disguised as maternal guidance. I began making myself smaller. In the grocery queue, I pretended to be charmed when the cashier called me honey and rang up Jade's wine with my bread. At the clinic, I smiled at the reception nurse as she casually asked if I had someone managing my medications. I noticed that Jade chose doctors for me now, physicians whose offices seemed more concerned with printing pamphlets about fall risks than listening. My fear is not falling. My fear is becoming a project. I tried to locate the rule of this new world. It sits in paperwork. In this country, anybody with a signed durable power of attorney and a letter from a doctor can manage your life like a filing cabinet. The law pretends to be neutral. It loves signatures and hates pauses. I learned that there is also a concept of gift with strings, a transfer of the home that still allows occupancy, called a life estate. I underlined the words because they felt like breathing room. But breathing room can be a trap if you don't know who is placing the carpet. One evening, Jade fetched a small box tied with ribbon from her bag and placed it in front of me. A gift, she said. So you can relax and stop worrying about all those silly papers. Inside lay a sleek bracelet with a help button disguised as fashion. If you press and we're not home, the call center will reach me, she said brightly. And there's a geofence. If you wander past the park, it alerts us. Wander? I felt the word barge into me. Like a dog? She laughed. Like a loved one. The next day, a letter from the bank arrived with the tasteful weight of bad news. We've updated your account ownership pursuant to your request. It read. Joint Mark Hart. I had not made this request. The teller had a lovely name, Priya. I know this because she signed the letter by hand. It's rare to see a name when something has been taken from you. It's a small mercy and a map. I put the bracelet on my wrist. It felt like a hand that never warms. I told Jade I would move into the spare room at their new rental to make things easier. I said it gently, as if I were the burden she had christened me and I had accepted the part. In the grocery store, Mrs. Sweeting from the HOA paused with her basket and glanced at my wrist. They got you one of those, did they? Good. Falls are unforgiving. Then squinting, do you know it has a microphone? I touched the smooth face and felt the tiniest seam. That night I pressed the help button by accident, then on purpose, and counted how many seconds it took before Jade's voice burst into the room, bright and breathless. Mom? You okay? Where are you? I am not a person who swears at screens. I swear into my teacup because porcelain forgives. I sat at the kitchen table while the house slept, wrote out the numbers and understood why they needed me confused. 3 transfers in the last month to a new debit card bearing my initials and a second surname. Gifts in the memo line. The money could vanish and legally it would be me being generous. I put the USB from Luis into my laptop, half expecting fireworks. Instead, dated thumbnails bloomed across the screen, silent films of our lobby. I watched Jade retrieve my mail and tuck 2 envelopes into her tote bag. Then at the elevator, slip one into the bin. I watched Mark sign for a registered letter and shove it into his jacket, the corner sticking out like a white flag he'd forgotten to wave. I saved them with names that would make sense when I was tired. 2_for bank. PDF. 3_02_mark_sign_delivery. PDF. The next morning, I went to the bank in my best coat that still smelled faintly of my husband's cologne in certain weather. I asked for Priya. She was young enough to be my granddaughter and wore a neat braid and a cautious expression. I need to understand these updates, I said, sliding the letter across. And why my power of attorney seems to be drafted without me. Her eyes flicked up. She lowered her voice. I shouldn't say this. We have to assume signatures are valid if notarized. But the copy we received looked like it was assembled from a template. The font mismatched on the last page. It happens when someone changes a name but not the body text. Who delivered it? I asked. She glanced at her screen. A woman named Linda Pierce. Financial caregiver consultant. I had never met a Linda. Did she charge a fee? Priya's mouth tightened. A recurring fee. Small but recurring. Paid from your account. A fake benefactor. They are always tidily named. Can I print my statements? I asked. All of them this year. And can I set an alert? If any change is made to beneficiaries or owners on this account, I want a text. But to this number, please, not the one on file. She risked a bigger thing then. She wrote her personal email on the back of a receipt. If you need a copy of the deposit camera footage for any reason, ask me. I'm not saying why. I'm saying if. I didn't go home. I walked 2 blocks to the legal clinic where my book club acquaintance Marta volunteers. She was not a lawyer. She was a paralegal who reads divorce decrees like crossword puzzles and mends her own umbrella. She listened without interrupting while I set my papers between us like a picnic. They will try guardianship next, she said softly. Then you'll be an expense line item and a signature. You're lucid and that makes you inconvenient. I need inconvenient. I need something cleaner than shouting, I said. Is there a way to make kindness unsellable? She smiled at that. We can create a living trust with a no contest clause that disinherits anyone who files for guardianship for financial reasons. It won't stop them, but it will make it expensive to try. And a life estate in the flat so no one can push you out. You retain occupancy until death. Even if you gift the property to the trust now. We will also file a care contract. If they're caring for you, they'll owe taxes on the payments they siphon. The revenue has no sense of humor. Another ally arrived quietly. The notary's assistant, Sophia, with shy eyes and a precise way of lining up papers, took me aside after our first appointment. They brought me your draft POA, Miss Hart, she said, voice barely above the hum of the copy machine. They wanted me to backdate. I said no, but they'll find someone who will. You should know. Why are you telling me? I asked. She glanced toward the closed door where her boss laughed with someone. Because you came in with your own notebook. People who write their own notes deserve to keep their names. I began my quiet revenge not with a bang but with a pen. We created the trust. I recorded the life estate. I set the no contest clause in ink that had more backbone than my son. And then I did something that would look like surrender. I told Jade that her plan made sense, that moving in with them would be safer. That she should go ahead and become my official carer. I let her file the application. I signed the care contract she presented, one that she didn't read carefully because it came from me, and it defined payments as taxable wages to the caregiver. When she pressed the bracelet's help button to test the response time, I made sure to cough and say, "Yes, I'm fine, Jade, just signing those papers you wanted." The microphone hears what it wants. Small victories came in whispers. Luis texted me a single line. Saved clip. Woman in red coat removes envelope, 2:14 p.m. Priya sent me a secure message with a still image of a hand that was not mine depositing family management fee. Checks into a new account with Jade's maiden name. And then the new blow. The manila folder with my trust copy went missing from my tote bag. It had been in the kitchen while I made soup. When I lifted the lid, steam hit my face like an accusation, and my throat closed. If you've never sat in a notary's waiting room while your future is folded in a back office, you don't know the taste of paper in your mouth. The family came dressed for victory. Mark in a blazer he found at a consignment store that still smelled faintly of someone else's cologne. Jade in a cream blouse that suggested purity to anyone not paying attention. The woman who called herself Linda Pierce arrived with them, soft-voiced and carrying a leather folio. I help families through transitions, she said, smiling at me as if I were a couch being moved. Sophia avoided my eyes when she called us in. She laid the deed on the table, and I watched Jade try to maintain a neutral expression as her gaze flicked to the words. "Where's the reservation of life estate?" Jade asked, aiming it at Sophia, not me. Sophia's hand was steady as she turned the page to show the clause. "Right here," Miss Hart insisted on it. "It was recorded yesterday." She looked at me then, quick, brave. Mark coughed. Jade's smile thinned. "We'll need to make a change," she said airily. "Mom's situation is fluid. Best to keep options open." "No." My voice was quieter than theirs, but it sat better on the table. "Before we do anything else, let me just thank you for organizing all this. And while we're gathered, I have a small presentation." I lifted my old laptop from my bag. Jade rolled her eyes. "We don't have time for." "You will," I said and clicked play. On the little screen the lobby appeared. The date stamp matched the day a bank letter had been missing from my pile. We watched Jade lift it, pause, and tuck it into her tote. Then another clip. Mark signing for a registered letter and slipping it away. I did not look at him while his face reddened. I watched Linda instead, whose polite smile balled up like tissue. "This is illegal," Jade hissed. "You can't just film people." "Cameras in common areas are posted," Sophia said quietly. "You signed when you moved in." I laid out the bank statements next, the recurring family management fees, the small charges to Linda's consulting service. Priya had circled the amounts in blue pen and written a careful note. Posting pattern suggests automated withdrawals. Jade reached for the papers. I shifted them a hair out of reach and smiled the way I do at toddlers eyeing scissors. "And since we're talking about automation, please listen," I said, and I pressed the button on the bracelet. The room filled with the recorded echo of Jade's voice from earlier that week, tinny but clear. Make sure she looks confused when she signs. If she hesitates, say the notary requires it, and hand her the pen. We need to get this done before her book club lawyer sticks her nose in. I had found the bracelet settings the night Mrs. Sweeting warned me. Recordings for quality assurance. It's always for quality, never for honesty. Silence took the room. Then Sophia, flushing, said, Miss Hart, do you still want to proceed with the deed as drafted? With the life estate intact, yes, I said. And I'd like to register the trust with the no contest clause. If anyone at this table initiates guardianship without cause, they lose everything in it. To be clear, you can't do that, Linda started out of her soft voice now. No court will. No court is needed to enforce a trust clause, Sophia said, voice firmer. And the Department of Revenue will be interested in the caregiver payments listed here. She tapped the management fees. Doors have a way of opening when you stop asking politely. The conference room door opened and Louis stood there, cap in hand, sweater neat. He held up his phone. Ms. Hart? You asked me to come if anyone tried to file anything without you. I have clips for the police if needed. He had never been invited. He had invited himself to decency. Behind him, unexpectedly, Mrs. Sweeting poked her head in. HOA meeting room is booked at 4, she said briskly. But if there's a legal tangle here that might affect the building's insurance, we should hear it. Transparency keeps our premiums down. Jade finally snapped, the smile closed. You recorded me without my consent. I can sue you. You can sue anyone, I said evenly. But you likely won't like the discovery. And if you file for guardianship now, you lose your share. It's in the trust. I made sure. Also, your fee is payroll now, according to this care contract you signed. Taxes are annoying. Audits are confounding. I hear they take hours you could spend building your brand. Mark looked panicked, then small, then a little boy. Mum, I didn't know Linda was charging. I thought. You didn't think, I said, and it was strange how little anger lived in the words. You like not thinking. The final twist came from a place I had not considered. A soft cough from the doorway. My granddaughter, Nina, who had been at school, slipped in. She must have texted Luis. She is friends with his niece. She held up a phone. Granddad had a password I found in the old stamp album, she said in a rush. It unlocked a folder in your email. There's a letter about the pension beneficiary change. Grandma, it shows you changed it last year to a charity for literacy with a condition for education of descendants. She looked at Mark, then at me. It bypasses children who commit financial exploitation. After that day, consequences marched in without needing name tags. Linda's consultancy was reported by Priya's bank to their compliance office. I didn't have to lift a finger. The Department of Revenue sent polite, firm letters about undeclared caregiving income. Jade posted fewer videos about abundance and more about offline healing, which is what people say when accountants ask hard questions. Mark took a job at the warehouse and began arriving at my flat at 7 a.m. to fix what he could. Door hinges, a loose towel rack, the squeak in my pantry shelf that had whined for 2 years. He hung back from my kitchen and asked before he touched anything. One morning he brought a thermos of tea and a bag of bagels and stood awkwardly on the stoop like his father in the photograph tucked in my cardigan. He didn't try to explain. He didn't need to. The trust did its quiet work. The life estate kept my own keys in my own pocket. The no contest clause settled over the family like a posted sign. No dumping here. When the relatives buzzed, Cousin Alma hinting at getting you situated, Aunt Ruth sending clucking voice notes about safety, I referred them to the clause. Sophia found a new job at a different firm 2 neighborhoods over. She sent me a message with a smiley face that rare people earn. I made choices I had postponed. I turned the spare room into a community reading space on Wednesday afternoons, chairs borrowed from neighbors, a kettle that never emptied. I brought in teenagers to help little ones with their reading, placed the basket for the literacy charity on the table where everyone could see it, and when the first donation crinkled through, I felt something unclench. People came who had watched me at the grocery line and at the mailbox and had wondered if it was their place to say anything. They brought cookies and rickety lamps and their company. As for Jade, she sent a text once that read, "We need to talk, it's all a misunderstanding." And then she didn't, because misunderstandings don't come with screenshots and tax bills. She stopped calling me, our heaviest subscription. I suppose there are lighter ways to learn about weight. In the end, our final conversation happened in the lobby. She was carrying an empty tote bag, and I was carrying a pot of soup for Luis's mother. We stepped aside for each other, neither sure which way to move. I was trying to secure us, she said into her shoulder. Everyone's scared. Money is never enough. Control isn't money, I said. It's a different hunger. And it doesn't cook dinner. She looked sharply at me, as if I had denied her something she'd already eaten. You're not as soft as you pretend. No, I said. But I'm still soft enough for my granddaughter to lean on. That's all I needed. I didn't moralize at the neighbors or the doctor's office or the HOA. I paid the care taxes from the months they helped, because that was right. I watched Mark file his first honest tax return in years, and make dinner for Nina with the confidence that grows after you stop lying to yourself. I heard the relief in Priya's voice when compliance closed her file. I brought Sophia flowers at her new desk, where she now sets her own margins. There is a question that stays with me, and I won't answer it for you because I can't. When Jade lifted those letters, what story did she tell herself? That I wouldn't notice? That I had lived long enough and paperwork is a kind of harvest? I don't know. What I know is that you cannot measure a life by its cost. And if you try, you will mistake a library for a pile of paper. Dignity is not an expense line. It is the thing on the other side of a door you learn how to open. Sometimes on Thursdays, I sit on the stoop with a bag of bagels and watch Nina come up the street, bending to tie her shoe without dropping her phone. She waves with the casual certainty of someone who knows exactly where the keys are. I always bring an extra bagel in case someone else walks by hungry and thinking they're an expense. I like to have one ready.